Hello, everybody, and welcome to another ArtistWorks Instructor Spotlight Series show. Thanks so much for joining us today. We are graciously joined by Michael Daves today, and his topic for this week is the classic tune, The Last Thing on My Mind. Now, all week we've been putting out little short sort of setup videos, mini lessons on this topic. You can check those out on our YouTube page. And today, Michael's going to give us a deeper dive. And we're also going to be taking your questions throughout the show. So feel free to drop those in the comments. Let us know where you're tuning in from. And thanks so much for being here. Let me bring on Michael.
Hey there. Hey, Marcus. Thanks.
Hey.
Thanks for setting this up.
Yeah, great to see you, Michael.
Yeah, you too. So Marcus said we've been rolling out these little mini lessons all week, just kind of breaking down the different aspects of the song. The Last Thing on My Mind, which is a folk standard by Tom Paxton. I think he recorded it in like 1964 or something, but it's, one of those songs that I think a lot of people who are new to bluegrass, they want to, bring in a song that they're familiar with into a bluegrass context. And sometimes that goes better than others, like they're like songs that, just might not, fit the formula, or it could be a jam buster, as you say, if you bring it into a jam. But this is an example of one that a lot of people know that works great in bluegrass, and it's actually been done by a number of bluegrass artists, namely Doc Watson, who's one of the first to record it after Tom Paxton, I think in 1966. And then Dolly Parton and Porter Wagoner did it a country version in 1967. That was probably the biggest hit on it. And then later on, Tony Rice and Clarence White and the Kentucky Colonels and many others. So it's definitely got some bluegrass cred at this point, and it's one a lot of people have known. And this is one that's heard my family for a long time. So I want to share this with you. And I'm going to start by just performing it, and then I'm going to break down some various aspects of it, talk about some of the different versions, the different sort of vocal ornamentation and whatnot, and rhythm, and then we'll in harmony. We'll come up with a harmony part for it too. But all right, so I'm just going to start by just playing it down. This is The Last Thing on My Mind. It's a lesson too late for learning, made us sand, in the week of a night my soul's turning, and my hand in your hand. Are you going away with no word of farewell? Can there be not a trace left behind? I could have loved you better, didn't mean to be unkind. That was the last thing on my mind. Got reasons aplenty for going. This I know, though the weeds have been steadily growing. Please don't go, please don't go. Are you going away with no word of farewell? Would there be not a trace left behind? I could have loved you better, didn't mean to be unkind. That was the last thing on my mind. Each song in my breast dies a thorning without you, without you. Are you going away with no word of farewell? Would there be not a trace left behind? better, didn't mean to be unkind. You know that was the last thing on my mind. You know that was the last thing on my mind. Okay. So for you guitar nerds, if you're wondering, I'm in drop D tuning. So where my what's usually my low E string is tuned down a step, so to get that low end. I use a lot of drop D in the key of D, in the key of G, and in the key of A. But I'm gonna bring it back up, bring it back to standard. And so yeah, that was in the key of D. And one thing, sometimes like novice singers will come to me like, what key is this song in? I'm like, hey, that's up to you. This like really in bluegrass, really the singer gets to choose the key within reason. If you decide your ideal key for something is C sharp, you would understandably get the hairy eyeball at a jam session, but you can make it, take it up or down a half step to make it an easier key for other people to deal with. But generally you get to choose the key. And Doc Watson did his version in A, which is actually where the original Tom Paxson, that's a little bit low for me. Lesson too late for the learning made of sand. And then Dolly and Porter did it up in B, but like, oh, lesson too late for, Dolly singing way up there. And then Porter singing a lower harmony. And Tony Rice did it in the key I was doing it in the key of D. It's on his Church Street Blues record. Beautiful version. So anyways, so what I wanted to start by doing is just kind of break down the melody. And the version that I was focusing on specifically on these little mini lessons that we've been rolling all week is the Doc Watson version, because that was really the first it's really a folk recording. It's on his album Southbound, which is folk oriented, but Doc has always had a foot in the bluegrass world, and that's sort of like how a lot of bluegrass people got familiar with the song, is hearing Doc do it. Anyway, so I wanted to break down some of the specifics of his vocal movements, because one of the things it's really important to look at when you're studying bluegrass vocals or country vocal is this idea of contour, and like the way a melody moves, particularly within syllables. And it's not something that you can really write down in standard notation that easily, because it's not just like a note, but it's like there's like a shape of like how do you slide from one note to the next, and like that contour is all very much part of the music. And it's not just like icing. It's not ornamentation purely. It's the music. So on my vocal school here on ArtistWorks, and I'm teaching workshop or whatever, I was trying to encourage students to really tune into like the specifics of a version, and really study, what that singer is doing ornamentation wise, vocal contour wise, rhythm, phrasing, all that stuff. And it's true that everyone sings a song a little different, and that's part of it, and that's fine. But I think just that process of honing in to melodic detail is something that most people have to learn, and B is really good for your listening skills, and C can just help you kind of expand your own toolkit. So, anyways, in the key of, I'm gonna let me do it low and then high. So I'm gonna do it in Doc's key, which is fairly low, and then the key of A. Here's your root, and I like to think of the scale in numbering, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And any scale, whatever key you're in, the melody can be understood like that's like moving from the 1, 2, 3 to the 5. It's a lesson. And so when I write this down, I write it in numbers, but also I will often just kind of show with my hand like how that contour goes. So if you can kind of imagine where we are on the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and my hand, I'm going to try to like kind of stay consistent with those spaces, but it's a lesson too late, and that's sliding from the 6 up to the high 1, the octave, for the learning. And in time it's a lesson too late for the learning. Then made of sand, it drops down to that. Here's the 1, that's the 7 below. So made of sand. And then the next line is kind of the same. This is the first. When the wink of an eye my soul is turning, in your hand. So I'm just going to sing the whole verse together in A. It's a lesson too late for the learning, made of sand, made of sand. All right, so now I'm going to take it up almost an octave to the key of G. So one, here's A, B, C sharp, D, E, F, G, and G, here's G. So this is, you know, for singers with higher voices. The scale's the same. Here's now our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's gonna be, it's a lesson too late for the learning, made of sand, made of sand. So like this. It's a lesson too late for the learning, made of sand, made of sand. In a wink of an eye, my soul is turning in your hand, in your hand. Okay, so just to make that point again, that like the contour is really, it's not just icing, it's really important to the song. So those slides, it's a lesson too late. If you just go, it's a lesson too late for the learning, without any of that movement, it's like it takes it out of bluegrass style. You know? There's a, I don't know, talk about that. You might have heard that Harlan Howard quote that bluegrass is just 3 chords and the truth. That's mentioned in the Ken Burns country music documentary, and you know, so people throw that phrase around a lot, 3 chords and the truth, and it's poetic. I get it, but it kind of makes me bristle in a way, because I think people latch onto that as this idea that, oh, country or bluegrass music is just really simple. It's quaint, it's meaningful, but it's simple, and that's not true. Certainly when you're looking at vocal contour, and harmonically, it can be true. Like there are a lot of country songs that just only have 3 chords in it, and compare that to like a jazz standard that might have 17 chords, or a classical, you know, a concerto that, you know, might move more through all these different keys and sections and all that. You know, the form of those musics are much more complex than the 3-chord country song. But again, when you like dig down on how the voice is moving, there can be a tremendous amount of complexity. And I choose this one because the way Doc Watson's singing this is not like super over the top. It's got that movement in there, and it's important, but it's not, you know, I know you listen to Dolly Parton, and she will do tons of movement, or Ralph Stanley, you know, I am a man of constant sorrow. You know, there's all that movement. You can't go, I am a man of constant sorrow, and really have it sound like bluegrass music, because without all the movement, it's just something else. So anyways, I encourage everyone to, you know, just be kind of thinking about the melodic line not as like a series of notes, but like as a series of movements and shapes. And so this is really good to, I think, chart this out. And you can do that yourself. You know, if you sing a song a certain way, listen to it. Be like, if it's, are you going away? You go, are you going away? And just like tune into, you know, how is it that you're thinking about that melody shape-wise? So anyways, all right, so let me go on to the chorus here. I'm going to stay in that higher key of G. And it is pretty high for me. I sing it in D, but can hopefully get up there. We got, are you going away? Away. Sorry. Are you going away with no word of farewell? Then can there be not a trace left behind? I could have loved you better, didn't mean to be unkind. You know that was the last thing on my mind. So, of course, are you going away with the word of farewell? Can there be not a trace left behind? Could have loved you better, didn't mean to be unkind. You know that was the last thing on my mind. And in the Doc Watson's key of G, So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So it's, are you going away with no word of farewell? Can there be not a trace left behind? I could have loved you better, didn't mean to be unkind. You know that was the last thing on my mind. Actually, Doc does it fingerstyle, so it's not there's not that much bluegrass fingerstyle playing. But Doc, of course, is a great flat picker. But are you going away with no word of farewell? Can there be not a trace left behind? I could have loved you better, didn't mean to be unkind. You know that was the last thing on my mind. So, anyways, that's how Doc sings it. And you know, Doc, as I said, he always has one foot in bluegrass. And Doc really, in his long and storied career, he only did really one album that's like straight up bluegrass, and that was Riding That Midnight Train in the mid '80s. But of course, he did all these amazing collaborations with Bill Monroe, doing like kind of Monroe Brothers stuff, and he's one of the great flat pickers. But anyways, Doc, we claim him as bluegrass. Anyway, so I wanted to just kind of explore a couple of these other versions a little bit of the song, like maybe let's do the Tony Rice. We'll go chronologically. Tony Rice, Church Street Blues record. Classic, mostly solo. And actually taught classes on the guitar, on his guitar playing on this record. But we didn't cover this particular track in what I taught. So a lot of those I actually know his breaks, but I'm going to be faking it. Go Capo 2, Tony's playing out of C shapes, still the key of D. And Tony sings it. It's a lesson too late for the learning, made of sand, made of sand. In the wake of a night, my soul is turning in your hand, in your hand. Are you going away with no word of farewell? Would there be not a trace left behind? I could have loved you better, didn't mean to be unkind. You know that was the last thing on my mind. And first of all, that's a really high note. We don't really hear Tony Rice singing "Oh, and away with." That's up to an F sharp. And many of you know, if you know Tony Rice's music, unfortunately, he battled focal dystonia, the neurological condition which ravaged his voice, and so kind of starting in the mid '80s, you know, his voice started to degrade, and by the mid '90s he was pretty much out of the singing, which is tragic because he had one of the greatest lead vocal sounds. Anyways, I just want to point out a few nifty things that Tony does with the voice that are unique to his version. So now he goes, it's a lesson too late for the learning. Now, learning. Now, this note in particular is significant because I'm not going to make this a theory lesson, but just the general idea is that melodies tend to land on the notes that are in the chord. So if I'm playing this is the one chord, it's a C shape or D chord in real world. Now the notes that make up that chord are the 1, the 3, the 5, da 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 da. And so the melody is, when that chord is happening, is going to spend a lot of time coming to rest on one of those three notes. It's a lesson, that's this note. And then the chord changes to too late. We're in the F chord shape, which is da, 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 or for the 3 chord tones, and the melody goes late for up to a chord tone, and then goes back to the C chord, learning, it comes to rest on this note. But what Tony does, he goes learning, so he like lands it on the note that's actually in the chord, but then takes it to this note which is not in the chord and actually conflicts quite a bit, because if I this note, the 1, the 3 is in the chord, but he's singing this note, and those notes, if you hear them together, so the 3 and the 4, that sounds like this. That's pretty dissonant, right? Like we wouldn't think that that's a place to land on, but learning, but he goes there. And the reason it works is because the note he's singing is in the chord that he's about to go to. So it's called an anticipation. And so it's like a little bit, it's like he's landing on a dissonant note that becomes consonant as soon as the chord changes. So it's a way of like placing a note that kind of draws the ear from one chord to the next. So learning the wrong note, now I changed the chord and that's the right note. So I didn't change the note, but it became consonant because the chord changed. And so he does that in several cases. Learning, you got that resolve of sand. Then he does it again on the word sand. We're on the C chord, like 1, 3, 5, 3, 1. He's sand. So the chord tone and chord tone. So those are like landing points. But he goes sand. Then he comes up to this note, which isn't as dissonant as the other one, but it's still conflicting with the chord a little bit. And it's not a place you would normally land a phrase. But where he's going is to the G chord, which has that note in it. So once again, it's an anticipation where he's singing a wrong note that becomes right in just a moment. So it's music always needs to have an amount of tension or release. I mean, if I sang only notes in the chords, it wouldn't be very interesting. I mean, it's a lesson too late for the learning, made of sand, made of sand. Sounds sort of like a nursery rhyme or something, but the notes where we're moving between notes, or like maybe landing on something a little bit dissonant that then resolves in some way, then that starts to add a lot more interest, and that's something that bluegrass music is very good at, and something Tony Rice is doing very deliberately here in his version. So all right, so then I want to just talk about one other version. And this is Dolly Parton's version, just from a couple years ago, and it's one that I know well because I actually played on, which was a great opportunity. Can talk about that in a little bit if we want. I was not actually in the studio with her, but anyway, so Dolly recorded it with Dolly Porter Wagner in 1967, and then Dolly and Doc Watson sang it together at Merlefest in like 2001 or so, and there's some video on there, like of the rehearsals, and it's just amazing. You should look it up. Just the Doc and Dolly singing the song together, just backstage. It'll floor you. But anyways, and so this was on a Doc Watson at 100 record. That's what it's called, Doc Watson at 100. And anyway, so and Dolly sings in this incredible version that she could have phoned it in, but absolutely did not. And Dolly's style has got a lot of quicker movements in it, compared to like Doc Watson or a lot of folk singers, because and Dolly stylistically is sort of actually not that far off from, say, Ralph Stanley, who is from Southwestern Virginia. Dolly's from East Tennessee, not too far away, but Ralph kind of came out of the primitive Baptist. There's like a very highly ornamented vocal style that's used in those churches that kind of like filtered its way into bluegrass. And so when you hear Ralph, like I gave that example earlier of Man of Constant Sorrow, man, and there's like all these like quick fluttery movements. They're very precise. They're not. He's not guessing at them. He knows exactly where he's going. But like those sorts of quick movements, Dolly's got a lot of that too. And I don't know if she got it from church or just that is something that kind of permeates country style, but not everyone is as quick and detailed as either Dolly or Ralph Stanley. And within bluegrass, you have like their singers that kind of come out of the Ralph Stanley school, namely Ricky Skaggs and Keith Whitley, who both started out singing with Ralph when they were teenagers, and they both picked up a lot of Ralph's styles, including those like really quick, precise movements. But anyways, Dolly's got a little bit more of that going on here in her version. She's in B flat. I'm gonna not do it quite that high. Let's see. I'll do it in the key of D first. It'll be more comfortable for me. And she goes, "It's a lesson too late for the learning." So she goes, "Learning," and real quick, "Learning." So it's a lesson too late for the learning. Then made of sand, made of sand. Then in a wake of a night. Sorry. In the wake of a night, my soul is turning. Does it again. In your hand. And so she goes, hand, like holds that 1, 2, 3. That's the third note of the scale. Hand, but then like really quickly 2, 1. In your hand, and then are you going away with no word of farewell? And this is a little different melody. Could there be not a trace left behind? Now at the end, it's not trace left behind, like landing on a single note. She goes, behind. There's 4 notes in that one syllable. And she does them really quickly and really cleanly because she's Dolly. Behind. Then, I could have loved you better. Didn't mean to be. Sorry. Oh, no, she goes up high. She goes, I could have loved you better. Didn't mean be unkind. Then, oh, that's the high harmony part. Then, that was the last thing on my mind. So, anyways, just typical of her style. And again, a lot of stylists within bluegrass to have like a lot of those really quicker movements. And that's something that you have to kind of train yourself into. Anyway, so that's I just wanted to kind of give breakdowns of some of the variety of like different ways that the song could be sung. And again, like I think there's like a lot of richness if you really look at the specific movements that a singer is doing in a great performance, which doesn't mean that if you try to emulate that doesn't mean you're going to sound like that. Like you or I are at no risk of actually sounding like Dolly Parton or Doc Watson or Tony Rice for that matter. Because we're going to sing in our own voices, and like our resonance is always our own. But there's a lot of value in, I think, looking at the specific ways that singers move, because there's so much that's expressed in those tiny choices, and if you sort of gloss them over, you're missing out on the transmission, I think, of like what that singer is expressing and what makes their style powerful. And I think as from a learning standpoint, you can get a lot of mileage out of like, picking a song here and here and here, like from different singers that you like for whatever reason, and really trying to like dive down and figure out track those exact minute movements, and that's not gonna be on every song. Like if you go to a jam and you want to like pick up a song on the fly and get the gist of it, that's great. You should definitely do that and participate. But in your learning process, it's good to like pick certain songs where you really do the deep dive. And again, the ultimate goal is you're not trying to sound like someone else, but you borrow from enough different sources and really pay attention to what they're actually doing, and it can really level up your singing. So anyways, before I move on, Marcus, do we have any? I was going to say, if any of you are watching, you're welcome to put questions in there and kind of respond. So, is there anything?
Yeah, actually, you pretty much just answered it. But Julie, as we know, hi Julie.
Hey Julie.
Much just asked, very much to that point that you just discussed, is just, like, I guess maybe a place you could take this is, like when you're just trying to figure out the aesthetic for moving the vocals around to make them interesting, how much is too much, how much is too little, like where would you start if this is something new for you?
Oh yeah. Well, if it's new for you, I say there's a difference in what makes sense to, attempt like in a practice room versus, if you're performing the song. Because, when you're performing the song, you don't want to have to be thinking too much about what you're doing. It should just kind of be natural and it should flow and kind of come from more of like an intuitive place. So I think it's when you're trying to like develop your style, I think it's important to have that sort of distinction intentionality wise that, okay, this is my practice time and I'm going to like try to tackle this thing that I don't know how to do yet. And you understand that, okay, might be able to get this far with it, but then, whatever work you do is going to then take time to become part of you and to fully internalize. And practice session wise, it's good to have like some repetitions, where you're kind of coming back to things that you've been working on, and just not just like one and done, but then it becomes part of the process of really internalizing those things. And what I find is like if I do emulation, and I am lucky that since I teach so much, I'll have students request like I want to learn this song. It's like, okay, well, let's go figure out what Dolly Parton's doing here, and I might transcribe it, teach it, and so through teaching I get to learn a lot of specific detail, the stuff that students bring in. And what I find is that I'll listen for it. I'll maybe like make a recording for the student that's like, hopefully accurate to the original, maybe slower, but, and then it just kind of like sits in there. And then sometimes like a day or a week or a month later, like something will kind of get stuck in my head, or I'll start humming the song and I'll start doing the thing that I had heard done. But it's like over that, given that time, that it's kind of it's become part of, my own internal storehouse of musical ideas. And so, when I'm performing, I always want to sing from that. And when you're learning, you're grappling with something that you don't know yet, and just you need to like kind of eventually like shepherd what you're learning into that place of intuitive thing. So as far as like, is there, can you overdo it? Absolutely. And I think it's helpful also to study like all the different stylists. For instance, you listen to like Bill Monroe and Jimmy Martin saying, and they're like putting tons of movement and blues notes in there. The lonesome sigh of a train going by. They're moving all over the place. But then if you listen to like Jim and Jesse sing the same song, it might be in the lonesome side of a train going by. There's some movement in there, but it's like a lot cleaner. So like each stylist kind of has their own way of putting it across. So, but I think that one rule of thumb is if you're finding like a particular melodic device or ornament or something kind of getting stuck in your head, and that's a sign that like that's something that's sticking and that's meaningful for you, and then you should try to sing that. That can be a guide to and then also just experimentation, because like a certain song it may like benefit more from more ornamentation, and others might be just best delivered kind of plain and simple. And that's just a choice that everyone's got to make as an artist, like which has to do with how you're feeling about the song and about the context that you're in. But
yeah, very cool. And I just wanted to bring it up too. Every month, Michael films like a sort of an exploration behind different iconic vocalists and important tunes. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I feel like that's kind of a treasure trove of this kind of thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, on ArtistWorks, so there's the curriculum that I've made. You can kind of work through, but I also make these monthly welcome videos that I'm just changing up, and in those videos, I often will do series looking at like a certain artist. So I mentioned Jim and Jesse, but I had done like a year's worth of welcome videos exploring their duets, and then recently wrapped up a 15-month series on Doc Watson songs to commemorate his Doc centennial, which was in 2023. And so I did that 23 into 24, and that wrapped up just in this past December. And actually, one of the reasons I chose The Last Thing in My Mind is that the final installment of that series was had special guest Allison Brown, the amazing banjo player who's also an ArtistWorks instructor. And actually, for all the Docs ones, I had different special guests who were pretty amazing. But Allison and I did this song, The Last Thing on My Mind, and I had each guest share stories about Doc. A lot of them actually knew Doc personally, and Allison shared this amazing story about like when they were touring together, when Allison's kids were little, and like I think the daughter was like a toddler or something, and backstage, like Doc just loved kids, and like she had this amazing memory of Doc holding the baby daughter, just singing just unaccompanied ballads to her. And it's like, this was like kind of before everyone had cell phones all the time. She's like really wishing she had that, but it was like a really touching story and said a lot about Doc, the person, who's just very, generous and loving, and, people who work with him knew that about him. But anyways, yeah, so the monthly series have been a lot of fun for me because, I kind of get to explore, but I'll like include songs that are not in the curriculum, but also, talk a little bit more about the artist and talk to, some, when I can, special guests. So I've currently this year I've launched a new series that's on Earl Scruggs, Flatt & Scruggs, like trio harmony, and because Earl Scruggs' centennial was last year, and people know Earl as the legendary banjo player, but he also sang the baritone harmony parts with Flatt & Scruggs. So if you hear a 3-part harmony in Flatt & Scruggs, that's Earl singing the lowest part, and baritone singing is sort of, I call it like the great thankless job in bluegrass, because it's one of the hardest parts to do, and you're unexposed. It's just, like, the divas all sing lead and tenor. Like the baritone singer is like got to be a good team player. So we're kind of been exploring baritone parts, and then also the Flatt & Scruggs repertoire, and talking about that. But anyways, yeah, thanks for asking about that, Marcus.
Yeah, very cool. I got a question here that is a good one. Just to talk about phrasing a little bit, like the different variations between different artists, and like, what's your take on how to approach phrasing on something like this?
Yeah. Well, phrasing, includes dynamics. It includes like the sense of like, where you're kind of swelling, accenting, and whatnot, but also rhythm, the vocal rhythm. And that's one of the things I did, one of the mini lessons on this past week on The Last Thing in My Mind is on rhythm. So I can talk about how Doc does the rhythm to The Last Thing in My Mind, which I think is pretty interesting. So syncopation is a big part of it. So let me just talk a little bit about what syncopation is, because it's super important. It's one of the things that distinguishes novice bluegrass singing from great bluegrass singing is the use of rhythm, syncopated rhythms. And a lot of the great singers, we are partially great because of their sense of rhythm. So anyways, I used in the lesson the suggestion of doing a muted strum, and if you don't play a strummed instrument, you can like N2, N3, N4, N1, N2, just to do something oscillating. So like tapping your hand 1, N2, N3, N4, N. So if you're counting that way, my hand's going up on the and. That's what we call the offbeat. And same with the strum. So notes that are on beat are like da, da, da. Those would be on the beat notes, so they're coming with the downstroke. But if I go da, 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 that last note, da, 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 came with an upstroke, so it's on offbeat, and then it's not followed by a note on the very next downbeat. So if I go da, 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 that's not a syncopation, because my last note of that rhythm before the space was on the downstroke. But if my last note before a space is the upstroke, da, 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 then that's syncopation. And so syncopated rhythms emphasize the offbeat with the upstroke, and kind of give a sense of kind of jump and a rhythmic loft. And so the difference, so if need like, are you going away with no words of farewell? So the way Doc sings that is not, here I'm going to do the rhythm, but it's not, are you going away with no words of farewell? And that would be placing everything on the beat, which is going to kind of sing a little basic and like kind of flat-footed. But he's going, are you going, are you going away with no words of farewell? So there was, what, 1, 2, 3, 4 syllables within that line which were placed on off the beat and syncopated. So, are you going away with no words of farewell? Song is, are you going away with no words of farewell? Is a lot more interesting than, are you going away with no words of farewell? So, yeah, I think a big part of phrasing is the variations in rhythm, and especially the use of syncopation. So an exercise that I recommend when you're listening to music is to do either of these, oscillating things, a strum or this. And I'll put on music on, like, if you listen to music on YouTube, it's easy to slow things down. Like, there's that little gear icon on a YouTube window where you can like take it down to 75% or 50% speed. Oftentimes you need to do that, especially with bluegrass. But so that you'll be listening to Doc. It's a lesson too late. It'll be like slowing way down. But then what you can do is find the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and listen how he's singing it, and listen to when he's landing a vocal note that corresponds with your upstroke. So, are you going away with no words of farewell? Then he goes, can there be not a trace left behind? There I'm kind of axing and trying to use a little body language to indicate where those syncopations are. But you can, that's a really great way to listen actively to music and really detect what a singer is doing. And, some singers are more syncopated than others. Doc is pretty syncopated. Like, listening to him sing, like, Shady Grove, each verse he's syncopating a little bit different. It's a masterclass in rhythm. Another great one is Mac Wiseman, who he sang lead with Bill Monroe in the year 1949 and then went on to his own solo career. Listen to Mac singing. He's the one who sings lead on Can't You Hear Me Callin', which is one of the most iconic bluegrass tracks. Bill Monroe, Can't You Hear Me Callin', that's Mac on the lead, and then Bill comes in on the tenor and the chorus. But masterclass in rhythm, just total master of phrasing. And I think a lot of that came, and Lester Flatt as well is incredible with rhythm. Jimmy Martin. And I think what that is like the syncopation is a major feature of music of the African diaspora. And so in the States, we have, bluegrass was formed as a hybrid music style that involved a lot of blues and gospel and most recently like Western swing. I say recently because bluegrass style as we know it kind of coalesced in the mid 1940s. Think of what was pop music on the air. Like, it was the pop music of the early 1940s was big band jazz. We're talking like Glenn Miller, Benny Goodman, Fletcher Henderson, Duke Ellington, Tommy Dorsey. Jazz, highly syncopated music. And so that, all these syncopated rhythms were just kind of in pop music. And so singers, like Mac and Lester and Jimmy and they were weaned on, they were surely hearing the pop music of the day and integrating some of the the syncopated rhythms from jazz, but also related to jazz was Western swing, like Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys was very popular in the early 1940s and highly syncopated, and a lot of those syncopated rhythms came in, especially to the vocals, but into the instrumental playing as well. So anyway, so that's a little bit about phrasing.
Man, that's fantastic information. Thanks so much, Michael. I just wanted to highlight too that you got a chance to sit down and actually interview Mac.
Yes.
And talk shop, and that's on your school, right? Like, that's
totally. Yeah. So part of the vocal school on ArtistWorks is got to build this interview library, and yeah, got to talk to Del McCurry, Mac Wiseman, Bobby Osborne, Jesse McReynolds, Alice Gerard, Laurie Lewis, Peter Rowan, Tim O'Brien, Rhonda Vincent, Daylan Bradley, Danny Paisley. Just the list goes on and on. Oh, Sam Bush, and yeah, that's a part of the ArtistWorks job that I particularly love. I mean, that and engaging with the students, but having an excuse to call up Mac Wiseman and be like, "Hey, can I interview you?" Because otherwise, I'm just like some random person. But yeah, I got to. This was in 20. I want to say 20. If I get the year right, 2017 or 18. It was like maybe 6 months before he passed, and so. Went to his house in Nashville, and me and Tony Trishka were there together, and yeah, talked for probably an hour and a half with this legend, and he had all these. By the way, I asked him if he still sang, "Hey Mac, do you ever sing Can't You Hear Me Calling?" And he's like, "Oh," and he was like 93 or 94 at the time. He's like, "Oh no, that's too high. You have to hold both legs up to sing that song." That's what he said. So. Clearly, his sense of humor was totally intact. But yeah, you can watch all those interviews as part of my school.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, a guilty pleasure, but I have to ask. You mentioned that you played this with Dolly Parton. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What was that experience like?
Yeah. Well, it was a great honor and opportunity. Again, this is for the album. It's called "I Am a Pilgrim." Doc Watson at 100. So it's a tribute record to Doc that came out in 2023. Right around his centennial, March 2023. Produced by Matthew Stevens, who did an amazing job, and it's definitely a bunch of different artists, not all of whom are kind of in the bluegrass and country fold, which I think was really interesting because it kind of showed the sort of breadth of Doc's influence. But yeah, so they'd asked Dolly Parton to participate in that. Based on, well, her having recorded the song in '67 with Porter Wagner, but especially because of that live video, which I mentioned earlier, from 2001 at Merle Fest, 2000, 2001, somewhere in there. But it's like Doc Watson and Dolly Parton backstage rehearsing this song, "The Last Thing on My Mind," and it's just breathtaking. There's a full band version, and then there's like just a clip that's just the two of them, and they're like having this amazing interaction. Doc was talking about how he was nervous, and it's like, "Oh, you don't have to be nervous around me. You were just from right over the other side of the mountain." And anyways, and they're just like being their incredibly charming selves. So she had agreed to do that, and then the producer Matt Stevens asked me to back her up on it, and of course a great honor. And so yeah, I recorded the guitar parts. In New York, and then they sent it to Dolly, and who overdubbed her vocal parts at her studio. And so I didn't get to be in the studio with Dolly, which is probably just as well because I might have lost it. Might have been a little nerve-wracking, but yeah. But the track, it's just, and that track got nominated for a Grammy. Didn't win, but it's just I recorded two guitar. Like a rhythm guitar and sort of a lead cross-picked guitar. It's originally maybe gonna, like, they had asked if I would do fingerstyle like Doc did, and I did a fingerstyle version, but it's just and I'm like, "Can I do a flat-picked one?" And they're like, "Sure, try it," and then that ended up being better. So, but yeah,
very cool.
And I used this guitar.
Nice.
This is my Gibson.
You had some people asking, like, commenting on how nice your guitars were and the beautiful selection you've got there. Can you maybe comment on a few of those?
Oh, sure. Well, this is been my main instrument for a long time. Like, kind of not 15 or 20 years. It's a Martin D18 from 1960 that was fancied up with all this inlay and binding. Before I got it, like it was done, I think, back in the 60s, and it's the original neck, but all this torch stuff is just like a veneer, so that was added, and then someone added inlay and binding, and just to make it give it some bling. I've actually had to replace the fingerboard and the bridge, so it had different binding on it when I got it, or different inlay rather, but they had to be replaced. Tom Crandall did all this in New York City. But yeah, so this is the guitar I played mostly on the album I did with Chris Thiele, and perform on most frequently with like Tony Trischka and other folks. And then this is the other main bluegrass guitar that I use, which is a Gibson J35 from 1939. I've had this since about 2019, and they're different sounds. I like them both. This one's got a big old chunky sort of baseball bat neck, which works for me. But if anyone was wondering what I was doing on that Dolly track, she wanted it to be in the key of B flat. So I did a rhythm guitar track that was here, capo 3, which is where normally people would go for B flat, but I used drop D tuning. So the G chord, instead of looking like this, is I got the G comes up to here, and it goes, it's a lesson too late for the learning. This Dolly range. Made of sand, made of sand. And so that's just the rhythm. And the reason I chose the drop D tuning is because when you go, the chorus, which goes to the 5 chord, are you going? It's supposed to be big, kind of like, it's supposed to be like an uplift when the chorus comes in. And drop D tuning, I get this low root note for that chord. I suppose if I were in standard tuning, I would have to come up here an octave higher, but I wanted that, sort of bombast. So, without you, are you going away with those? And so on. So that guitar is just sort of, strumming. And then I overdubbed a second guitar part that was up here, capo 6, playing out of E shapes, and to kind of get the fingerstyle feel, I was doing more like cross picking. Fills, and like I do that, and she goes, she like hums along, like in response to what I played, which sort of totally floored me when I never heard the playback. But anyways, yeah, so that was working with. If I ever meet Dolly Parton in person, I got something I can talk with her about, like, hey, I backed you up on that track. Got nominated for a Grammy. She'd be like, who are you? But anyways.
Oh man, that's great. Thanks for telling the story, man.
She's definitely a total sweetheart. Chris Thiele, who I worked with a bunch over the years. Chris got to work with Dolly when I think Chris was like 16 or something. I think it was when she was doing. She did a couple bluegrass records, like My Grass Is Blue and all that. And I think Sam Bush played mandolin on the record, but like couldn't do some of the touring or something. So he says, hey, you should call this kid Chris Thiele. He's really good. 16-year-old Chris Thiele got to back up Dolly Parton and go on tour with her. And there's some videos out there of like Dolly like featured him, like the two of them like doing duets, which is pretty incredible. And Chris said that Dolly is like that persona that we know Dolly Parton like out in the world. She's just like that. Like that's also behind the scenes Dolly. She's like total sweetheart. She's just not like, the cameras go off and she's like, making fun of people or whatever. Evidently she's just, that sort of generous, humorous spirit through and through, which is good to hear.
For sure. Very cool. Well, thanks for demoing it on that guitar too. Like, it's really cool to hear the contrast between like where you started off playing it and sort of the drop D versus like where someone else, like a female vocal, might take it. Yeah, really cool stuff.
Yeah, it's one thing I think about a lot in the guitar, like in bluegrass setting. Certainly, if you go to a jam, there are often way too many guitars. Like everyone plays guitar, and like that's sort of a thing. Like a lot of bluegrass jams, you might have like 8 guitars and like 1 banjo and 2 fiddles or something, and it's have you ever heard like a bluegrass jam getting sort of cacophonous and you like can't hear each other and feel like you have to like shout over it? That's usually the guitar player's fault, and it's usually because all the guitar players are strumming out of G and strumming too much. Like, and that's like sort of strumming that might work for like a folk or a rock context. But if you get even one guitar strumming that heavy in a bluegrass context, it's going to kind of get out of hand, and much less 8 of them. So one thing I like to do when I'm participating in multi-guitar settings, this could be a jam session, or I've done guitar duos with both Brian Sutton and Chris Eldridge, both ArtistWorks instructors and 2 of the best guitar players you'll ever hear. But we'll often capo in different places. So if we're in the key of G, one person would be playing out of G, and the other might be capo 3 playing out of E shapes, and it just kind of gives the 2 guitars a little different texture and kind of gets out of their way a little bit. Or if someone's an open G, I could be here capo 3 out of E, or I could be here capo 5 out of D, or I could even be capo 7 out of C shapes. And here you get like a real the higher you get up you go, the further away the guitar sounds get from one another. So that's one thing that when you have multiple guitars, it's often can help kind of clear up the sound and create space for everyone for guitars to be capoed in different places. And then the other thing, I talked about this on the school about my school on ArtistWorks is focused on bluegrass vocals. And I love teaching guitar. That's not what I'm on ArtistWorks to do, but I do discuss some like accompanying of song, like singing and like some rhythm guitar stuff, and also things like learning to play the vocal melodies on the guitar will do. But one of the things I talked about in the course is with rhythm guitar is to be mindful of where the tonal range of the voice is. So oh, the lesson too late for the learning, made of sand, made of sand. There, I just played the melody, and that's in the key of G. The melody's all on like happening on the top 3 strings. So when I'm strumming, I'm going to want to like be light on the top 3 strings, because that's the tonal range where the melody is happening. So if I go, it's a lesson too late for the learning. There, I'm just doing mostly bass note. It leaves plenty of room for the vocal. Whereas if I go, there's a lesson too late for the learning, there, I'm strumming pretty heavy in that same zone, like up top, and I feel like I have to shout over that. That's not fun to sing along with. So that's one thing that guitar players especially need to be mindful of, is where is the tonal range of the vocal. And most bluegrass vocals kind of tend to group around the top 3 strings of the guitar. So if you can, while the singing is going on, focus on the bottom, the low end of the guitar with just kind of like a light strum, and then also that leaves you plenty of headroom to do like a strum fill. So like, it's a lesson too late for the learning, made of sand, made of sand. So I brought in that strum in that gap between the vocals, and that's a great thing to do. That sets up this idea of call and response. So. All right. Yeah, Marcus, did you have
perfect. Oh, no, you read my mind. I was just going to sort of ask about, like, because you talked about sort of like within a jam sequence of, like staying out of the way of each other and sort of filling open space, and, how that relates to vocals. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Any other questions?
Yeah, well, I thought this might be a good opportunity just to talk a little bit about, like, if somebody was wanting to work this song up and submit a video to you. Can you talk a little bit about sort of how that process works? Like, what would you need to see from somebody to be able to coach them, and what would they expect in return in a video?
Oh, yeah. So on ArtistWorks, that's one of the main features is that students have the option. There's not the requirement, but you have the option of sending a video of you working on whatever the lesson or the song is, and I respond to that with a video, giving personalized feedback on you, and then it's posted masterclass style. So a lot of students just kind of learn from watching my responses to other students and whatnot. But it's pretty wide open what a student could submit. But I might and it doesn't need to be a whole song. But like if they could if they It might be like trying to find a good key for their voice, so sometimes like I'll suggest like, hey, try it in like 2 or 3 different keys, like it's a lesson too late for the learning, made of sand, or say, look at the high part. Are you going away in a word of farewell? And then try it a little higher. Are you going away with no word of farewell? Or are you going away with no word of farewell? And so on. I would, hear a little bit more of it than that. But, choosing a key would be, is especially students who are just getting started and still getting used to, finding the range of their voice, that can be a part of it. And so I'm listening for, what their natural range is and also where the voice breaks, like because we have like the chest voice, that's your speaking voice, and then at some point your voice breaks into head voice, So my voice breaks like right on C sharp, and like a lot of it's pretty common for a male voice to break around C sharp or D, and above that, you got the head voice, which you could think of the falsetto would be like the pure head voice. That'd be like your cartoon, hello boys and girls, your kind of cartoon character voice, or if you're yawning, but notice that's pretty low for some of these songs. So actually, a lot of bluegrass singing is done above the break, but it doesn't sound like Mickey Mouse. Are you going away with no word? Yeah, it's what's called a blended head voice, and it's like, are you going away with no word of farewell? And so a lot of times you're dealing with having to cross the break, and so I might be listening for how comfortable someone is crossing the break, and we might be able to tweak the key to optimize that for where a singer's at. I think a lot of singers, especially male singers, want to sing things really low. They're not comfortable using the head voice, but so I think have instruction on like how to kind of open that up and get comfortable with it. But so that would be one thing, is key and finding range and exploring how your voice works in different parts of its range. And definitely listening for rhythm, like I was talking about earlier, if a student is kind of putting everything on the downbeat, we'll explore ways to like, here's some options for syncopating, and here, gives you some exercises for, practicing syncopations to get more rhythmic variety in your singing. A lot of times we're looking at vowels, because like, and I gave this one of the mini lessons that we posted this week was on opening the vowels. So, things like, you can get a big boost for your singing if you just get in the habit of hanging on the vowels for as long as possible. So, the word R, like the beginning of the chorus, R you go. You could go R, you could like close down and like kind of sustain on that R sound. And that's a lot less open sound than R, the vowel that comes before it. So things like, instead of going R, go are you, and just like really try to minimize the, the closure at the end of the word, and like keep that vowel open for as long as possible. That's a kind of a simple tweak that can really open up the sound of people's voices. And like the more vowel you're hearing, the more of the natural resonance and sound of each individual singer you're hearing. And so there's certainly room for like, pronunciation, accent and stuff like that. But there are a lot of different ways of handling vowels. But like, as a rule of thumb, like the more you can kind of live in the vowel sound, the more it's be more effortless to sing, for one, but also just kind of more open. So helping people open that, and that's not like some big like technical adjustment. It's just like a kind of more of an awareness thing. But those are some of the things that come up often in in video exchanges. And when we're studying like a particular version of a song, like I teach in the curriculum, sometimes it's like helping, like, hey, yeah, the way you're singing that makes total sense, and that would go great in a jam session, but I really want you to like tune into this thing that Hazel Dickens is doing, or Ralph Stanley is doing, like in this moment, this like kind of trying to highlight like specific detail that really kind of makes a performance pop. So kind of helping hopefully student, kind of listen and like execute more of that stuff and just kind of, try it out. So
That's so cool. Yeah, kind of really helping each individual find their voice.
yeah. And yeah, and the other thing is singing is so personal and like or feels very personal to people. So I mean, some of it's just kind of finding the confidence, and just giving encouragement for like that anyone can do this. And like I think for some students, who are maybe not ready to or not comfortable with the idea of submitting a video that other people will watch, they might get inspiration from watching other students kind of going through the same thing, and be like, oh, this is something learnable. And that's something I'd like to highlight, because this is something I didn't really realize when we went into we launched this vocal school in 2016, and I didn't really have a sense. I mean, I could have, but of how little vocal instruction there is out there in bluegrass music, because there's tons of instrumental instruction, like all the bluegrass instruments. There's like a long history of method books, VHS, DVD, online download stuff, and then like all the, and ArtistWorks had all of the instrumental school positions filled already. So, but there's so little understanding, at least within bluegrass and country music, is like how one would go about learning this. Like, is this even a learnable skill? Like I like it really didn't dawn on me going into it, like how much of an open question that was for many people. I think that a lot of people have this idea that singing is something you either have or you don't, or like if you didn't grow up with it or come from this specific part of the country, you can't do it. But that's just not true. I mean, there are a lot of great singers who have become masters of the style from not having grown up with it, or have not having like sung much before a certain time. And like I've had tons of students over the years who'd be like, I want to learn how to pick fast. And I get them doing your training exercises, and they realize, oh my gosh, I have this voice that I can use. And if I'm get comfortable using it, I can participate that much more in a jam session or in a band, or just expressing myself or whatever. And so I'm all about helping people kind of discover that their voice, that singing is learnable, that they've probably got a lot more of a voice than they think. And so I think that's actually a big part of what we do on the site, is just kind of helping people frame this as a process and understand that, oh yeah, this is very learnable. And here are, the things that you can practice and pay attention to, and, to move the ball forward. So.
Yeah, fantastic. I think you've done so much contributing to this. I remember like when we were first talking about, what would go into the curriculum, when we were thinking of things like, okay, teach some warm-ups, and you're,
yeah.
Do you remember?
Oh, yeah, there's this joke, and I think this comes from Gillian Welch, is that how does the bluegrass singer warm up? That's it. So, yeah, which is kind of a reflection on on how little sense there is within the world of the voice is an instrument, just like a banjo or a fiddle or a mandolin, and you can cultivate it. You have to take care of it. Here's how you warm up. Here's how you develop your skills, how you expand what you can do. Here's how you express yourself, and it's all it's all there to do. But like I'm just glad that we have a place we can all kind of talk about this, and it's a community of support. And you're seeing that there are a lot of other people in the same boat. And
absolutely. So, yeah. And, workshopping these things sort of in a friendly community where everyone's kind of got the same goals. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And people are really supportive. Like, I've periodically put a little encouragement in there to like, hey, like when you see someone else's, video exchange, and you probably learned something, just put a little supportive comment and thank them for sharing, and say like, hey, that can go a long way. Like I think for the learning process, if you have a sense that like what you're going through is like actually helping someone else, that can be like motivating, for you, and make people more comfortable sharing. I think, but
totally.
Yeah, it's definitely the sort of place it is.
Absolutely. Well, hey, I kind of lost track of time here. And thank you so much for being here with us today. Very generous of your time here. But what's the best place for folks to check out more of like what's going on in your music career and stuff? Like, do you have anything to plug at the moment, or?
Yeah. Well, you can always go to michaeldaves.com. This is where I keep my gig calendar. but I'm actually, if any of you are in the UK, I'm going to be touring there in early May. I'm going over there playing the Shetland Folk Festival with Jacob Jolliffe at the beginning of May, which I'm excited about for a lot of reasons, but including it's a 12-hour overnight boat ride from Aberdeen, Scotland to get there. It's like way up in the North Sea. And anyways, we're playing there, and then I'm doing like just a short like 5-show solo tour through England after that. So that's May 6th through 10th. So if any of you are in London, I'm going to be there on May 6th. Or if you know someone in London, those dates are all on our website. Jake and I have made a record. Actually, we did a record of Jim and Jesse material that's been in the can for a little while, and we're now kind of working out when and how that's going to get released. Hopefully, I have an announcement before too long. And because just last weekend, I recorded a solo EP, which I haven't done in quite some time. So I should be releasing that shortly. And that's all. Speaking of guitars, I play. I really like old K guitars, like plywood K guitars. I actually don't have any of them right here, but there's like a True Tone guitar that I've played also on the Thiele Daves record and performed on a lot. It's all plywood with a bolt-on neck, and then I have a giant K jumbo that my wife, who's a luthier, had rebuilt for me, and so it's all country and bluegrass songs on K guitars. And so the sort of the working title is sort of, I don't think it's going to actually call it this, but I've been calling it K for Country. But anyways, yeah, those are some of the things coming up, and touring also with Tony Trishka, fellow ArtistWorks instructor. We've got he came out with this record last year called Earl Jam, which is a tribute to Earl Scruggs, and that got nominated for a Grammy, and we've been touring that as the band Earl Jam. And there's actually some of those dates are on the calendar now, but there are actually more that are getting ready to announce. We're hitting some of the festivals and all that this summer. So yeah, I always say, like, tell all the students, if you ever see me, the merch table, always come say hi. It's a friendly community. So
absolutely, that's great stuff. Yeah, I was fortunate enough to check out some Earl Jam sets, and man, if you haven't caught it, definitely don't miss it. It's fantastic. And
it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Really cool stuff.
Tony's great, one of the great banjo players, but he's also just can be a very like hilarious MC. he's just a delightful presence, and it's always fun. We've been working together for years and years, and it's always fun.
Totally cool. Well, for everyone that just happened to find this, check out like and subscribe to this YouTube channel, ArtistWorks. We do these spotlights and live streams, and we've got lots of free lesson content coming out all the time. Check out, we just posted a new mini lesson every day this week for Michael Daves. So check those out to get caught up, and then this will kind of culminate the whole thing. And for sure, click the links below to check out free sample lessons and learn more about Michael's ArtistWorks Bluegrass Vocal School. You can learn directly from him. He's standing by waiting for your song to respond to and help you get to where you need to be. And once again, thank you so much for being here today, Michael. Do we have time for maybe one more song?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
Let's keep it with Dolly Parton. This was a song I actually just recorded. It's going to be on this solo EP. It's a song that Dolly actually wrote called Early Morning Breeze. It's on the Jolene record from early 70s, and it's an incredible track, and it's an incredible song. But Early Morning Breeze also is the name of Dolly's signature fragrance, if anyone was wondering.
The early morning sun, closing it behind me, and away I do run. Meadow where the meadowlark is singing in the trees, in the meadow I go walking in the early morning breeze. I cut my hand to catch a multicolored butterfly perched among the rolling wild. Freeing it, I watch it as it flies away from me, to visit with the flowers in the early morning breeze. Rainbow-colored petals kissed with the early morning sun, the aster and the dahlia and the wild geranium. Drops of morning dew still linger on the iris leaves, in the meadow where I'm walking in the early morning breeze. Misty-eyed, I look around the meadow where I stray, and there I find the courage to greet the coming day. There among the flowers I fall gently to my knees, to have a word with God in the early morning breeze. Sun, the aster and the dahlia and the wild geranium. Drops of morning dew still linger on the iris leaves, in the meadow where I'm walking in the early morning breeze.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for that, Michael.
All right. Thank you, Marcus. Great to see you. And thanks everyone for tuning in. And hope to see a bunch of you on ArtistWorks.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.
All right.
See ya.